how can we better understand ourselves to position ourselves better for success?
Genes. That's a controversial thing I say. It's painful, but it's true. If genetics didn't pass on almost everything, evolution would stop working. The majority of people have low risk-taking genes. There's nothing wrong with them being an intrapreneur, not an entrepreneur, because low risk takers have hiring. A lot of the smartest people in the world's genes are gone, because if you're super intelligent, you're like Solomon in Ecclesiastes, everything's vanity. You might as well blow your brain out, right? We have a myth everybody should be entrepreneurs. That's not true. At a genetic level, we know this. That's not how genes work.
One of the biggest things you're talking about at the moment is finding out our motivation style. So how can we better understand ourselves to position ourselves better for success?
Genes. That's a controversial thing I say, but it's true. And it's painful, but it's true. So it's not so much finding out motivate. I mean, I built with some scientists, I built a company, 12types.com. There's a company called 16 Personalities, but it's using very outdated science. Myers-Briggs is like 1950 stuff before they had even decoded the genome. So I think there's unconscious motivators. I think genes are, look, evolution. They asked 100 smartest people in the world, what's the most profound thought in human history? And I think 96 of them said Charles Darwin's concept of evolutionary biology. So you basically have, if genetics didn't pass on almost everything, evolution would stop working, right? So the whole premise of evolution is that we have sexual reproduction and things change over time. So whether you have a temper or don't have a temper, genetic. Likelihood you're Republican or Democrat in America, very genetic. In 50 years, they're going to swipe your spit of a baby and be like, this baby's going to be a Republican. This one's going to be highly religious and have spiritual, spiritual feelings. This person's going to be an atheist. This person's going to have anger problems. This one will probably be a drug addict. This will be an alcoholic. This one will be high twitch muscles, probably a pro athlete. It's like life outcomes. They're a lot of the smartest people right now, based on what we understand. The real question is, does free will even exist?
So you're saying, so how we're born, our genes, the way we're made up has more to do with what we'll do in this life, what we'll achieve than...
Yes, than anything. But it's not 100%. Not everything's 100% genetic. So eye color is 100% heritable. You have zero environmental effect. So you could be born in the slums of Johannesburg. You could be born in Beverly Hills. If your parents pass on blue eyes, it's just 100%. Then there's certain things that are very environmental. Like if I break my toe is probably 90% environmental. 10% though, some people have more brittle bones. So you would say it has like 0.1 or 0.2 heritability. But things like IQ, which is the most correlated personality trait with wealth creation, is like, they used to think it was like 0.4, 40% chance. If you take 100 people, their IQs explain 40% by genetics. Now it's all the way up into the 60s and 70%. As we get better, it's going to, you think Einstein, you think you can turn your kid into Stephen Hawking because you played classical music to him in the womb? No. Just like you're not going to become, Shaquille O'Neal is 7'2", 220 centimeters. You think that's because he ate better than most dudes? I don't have shit to do it. Now, what environment can do is if he was starved as a baby, he could have been stunted, but his upside potential was locked in at conception. One of my mentors is a super controversial. He got canceled at one point, although he was probably right. He's in Satoshi Kanazawa. He wrote a book. He's at London Business School or London School of Economics, one of the most respected schools, but he got big time. He started talking about genetics and stuff. It was like people flipped out. But, he always says, Tai, a man contributes most to his children at the moment of conception. Some people take this negative and say, well, are you saying that not everybody can be rich, let's say? Well, everybody can be rich, but not everybody can be wealthy. The wealthiest people in the world are all extremely high IQ, assuming they didn't inherit the money. What is Elon Musk, Bernard Arnault, Warren Buffett, Zuckerberg, what do they all have in common? The one trait would be extreme IQ. The first time I met Elon Musk one-on-one, I asked him, how'd you figure out, I actually just posted it on my social, how'd you figure out SpaceX? without having you didn't go to school for aerospace engineering. He's like, I bought a whole bunch of textbooks. I read it and I self-taught. That's a trait of extreme high IQ. So the genetic limits of wealth, like I said, you can be a millionaire without a high IQ, for sure.
I think the ultimate successful life, at least for me, when people ask me as well, if one can completely understand their hierarchy of values and live a life as best they can in alignment with that, that is the successful life. Because some people would be like I take my dad, for example. My dad hasn't had huge ambitions. He's left Australia one time in his life. Very low risk taker. But if I was
That's very genetic, by the way.
In which way?
Risk taking.
But I'm a fucking skydiver.
Yeah, but there's sexual reproduction. You're only 50% related to your dad. It might come from your mom's line. That's why Homo sapiens have sexual reproduction. If you were a fern, you're a simpler animal, plant, I should say, and they don't sexually reproduce. People get that, like, oh, I'm not like my dad. I'm like, well, that's not how genes work.
Yeah.
It spreads out. You might be like a great-grandfather, great-grandmother.
Could be, yeah. My granddad was a boxer. I was a
there you go.
For
he used to fight. That's how it works. You have your 25% related to your grandparents, 12.5 to your great-grandparents.
At which point do genes play a part in? So, like, my whole background, everything I've learned and studied is all in the mind. Identity, values, beliefs, all these things form our reality. So what percentage, if there is percentages, genes play a part of how we've formed between the ages of 0 and 7 and 14 and 21? Because if I look at my dad, for example, I would say because of the way he lived, that was probably a lot that taught me to be like, I don't want that. I want to have a business. I want to make money. I want to have more freedom, because he sort of just did the generic, took a job, did the best they could. They did, you know what I mean? So what percentage do you think that plays?
Yeah, but that's your conscious mind thinks that. I bet you, and they've done a lot of studies called twin studies, if you had been adopted, if you had never met your dad and mom, you'd probably be very similar to now. It's not like that. I mean, look, why are the two wealthiest people almost in history, Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos, orphans? They're orphans. The parents didn't have any effect on them. And look how successful. But I bet you those parents, they contributed their genes in such a interesting formula. You know, Steve Jobs had a lot of mental instability. He probably, oftentimes people who abandon their kids have mental instability, but sometimes narcissists, for example, abandon their kids, and narcissism is also somewhat positively correlated with IQ. Super complex. We don't even understand it. Ask me in 100 years, and like I said, we'll know more. But what we do know, there's a great guy, Dr. Robert Trivers. He's probably the most cited living scientist. He's the Harvard professor who is the head of the Harvard, or was, of the evolutionary biology department. This is new science from the 70s. We just decoded the genome. But I mean, your brain it's following a blueprint that came through the genes in the chromosomes. So it's highly correlated. I think our ancestors will laugh at our environmental stuff. You can get plenty wealthy as a low risk taker. I'd rather see people not torture themselves. We have a myth, everybody should be entrepreneurs. That's not true. We know this at a genetic level. The reason nature makes some high risk takers and some leaders, imagine if everybody became a leader, who would follow? 8 billion armies with everybody's the general. Who are they commanding themselves? So you're not going to have a world where everybody starts their own business, and many people shouldn't, but it doesn't mean anything negative. You can be the next Steve Ballmer.
What motivates you now?
I don't know, adventure. I'm like a combination of my dad and my mom's side, so probably adventure meets intellectual realizations, maybe.
Are you familiar with, because I'm sure you do, like, when you meet people, do you like psychoanalyze the fuck out of them? Like, you think?
I guess she's
yeah.
water sign, but I guess Scorpio, not Cancer.
Right. So like,
I knew she doesn't like to be read. Some people, you can tell people by some people love being read. And so I got you as a Gemini on the first bet. Yeah. That's my non-scientific part, astrology. So there's a big difference between me, and I'm stuck in between. My problem is I don't totally fit in with the self-help world, but I'm kind of a self-help guy. And I don't totally fit in with the intellectual scientists because they never apply their science to real life. So I'm in this kind of no man's land.
Just objectively looking at everything.
Yeah, I'm more like, all right, I'm going to apply the science, make it work for my genes. And that's the best I can do.
Yeah. So I want to talk about wealth.